For our March Digital Dealer Exclusives project, we're going to do the bunny silhouette mug rug. For our sample, we're going to do the 5x7 hoop size, and you would also have received a larger hoop size as well with your downloads. So we'll first review what's in your kit if you got one of our kits. So in our kit, we have a 6x6 piece of the white background fabric, as well as a piece of the fusible backing. We have one piece of the background fabric that is 4x6, and then you have two pieces of the for your back that is 6x9. And you also have your project batting. And then we have our three pieces for our bunny. We have two fabrics and a pink leather. You may have gotten some fusible backing for the fabrics as well. Now then you're also going to need, not including in your kit, is some cutaway stabilizer in a 5x7 hoop. And it also does call for some water-soluble topping. We did not include that in your kit, but you might want to use some of that when we get to the leather. So that's everything we need to get started, as well as your threads. You're going to want white, a light pink, and then a dark pink as well. The first step is to open the 5x7 design on my machine and place my 5x7 hoop on with cutaway stabilizer, and I've started with white embroidery thread top and bottom, or in the bobbin. The first step is to do a placement line for the batting. So once I've stitched that placement line, I'm going to completely cover that with my batting, and then we're going to do the next step is going to stitch the batting down. Stitched a placement or a template on here for your two pieces of fabric. We're going to take our fabric one, the white that we have the fusible backing on, we're going to place it over the bottom section, which is section number 1. We want that to completely cover section 1. So we're going to place that, and then the next step is going to stitch a trimming and placement line across right here. I'm now going to trim that right up to the stitch line. And then the next step is to take my next fabric, my fabric 2, and I'm going to place it right side down with the long edge. We want it centered along this strip. We'll just center that here so that that covers that. It's going to be right along where we cut that. So right along here. You can tape that in place if you want. I think mine's going to be fine. I'm just going to, the next step, step number 4, is going to stitch a seam. We're now going to flip that up, and I'm just going to finger press it. If you want to use a mini iron and press it, you would want to remove it from your machine, but just a finger press works quite well. So just going to flip that up and finger press that down. The next step is going to do a tack down around the whole, keep that whole project in there. 6 is going to do all of our quilting lines. So now that the mug rug has been quilted, what's great about these projects is at this point you could put anything in here other than the bunnies. So you could use this with any fabrics and any type of design. You could go in and add your own design. If you check out, I think it was my last video, I showed using the app to eliminate all the other parts, but you could just go ahead and add something else and skip ahead of the bunnies and put whatever you want in there. So that's really a nice thing about these mug rug patterns, is you can add anything else. So just an idea for you. We'll go ahead and work with our bunnies. Our next step is to do the placement line for one of the bunnies, for bunny number 1. So after doing the placement line, I'm going to take my first piece of fabric. I do have some fusible backing on that. I'm going to completely cover the placement line and we're going to stitch that down. I still have my white on. I haven't changed threads yet. After stitching the tack down line, I'm going to use my smaller scissors, and again I'm going to trim right up to the stitch line. Now you also did get SVG files with this, so if you do have a digital cutter, you could have pre-cut these shapes out. Just place them down, and then you wouldn't have to do the trimming. You would just skip the tack down line. So I'll get this trimmed, and then we'll do the decorative stitching. After trimming, the next step is going to do a decorative stitch around the outside of bunny 1. After completing the decorative stitching on bunny 1, we're now ready to do a placement line for bunny 2. Now bunny 2 is going to be done in the leather, so it does call for some water-soluble topping. So if you do have some, you might want to put that on when we come back to do our decorative stitching. It's just going to help keep that the stitching from kind of sinking down into the leather. So I'm going to go ahead and just tape down my water-soluble topping on top of the leather, and then we'll go ahead and do our tack down line through the water-soluble topping and the leather. Going to trim the topping and the leather right up to the stitch line, but I'm going to leave the water-soluble topping over top the bunny itself. Now the topping really just pretty much rips off. You can rip it right up to that stitch line, and then I'll come back and I'll trim the leather up to the stitch line, leaving the topping on. I've now switched to pink thread on the top, my lighter pink, and I'm ready to do the decorative stitch on bunny number 2. I'm going to skip around a little bit in my sewing order to avoid some thread changes. So while I still have my light pink on, looking ahead, step number 17 is also going to use my light pink just to do this little flower here. And it's not going to need to be on top of anything else. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump to step number 17, and I can come back to that third bunny when I'm going to be using the darker thread. So I'm going to go ahead, I've jumped to step number 17, and I'm now going to just stitch the little flower with the light pink still on. I'm now putting in my dark pink, and I'm going to go ahead and do number 18 flower with the dark pink. So it did the one flower at the top and the little bit down here at the bottom as well in the dark pink. So while I've got the dark pink on that did the flower at the top and down here, the next step is to do just the little centers there, and I'm going to come back and do those in white when I do all my decorative stitching on the bottoms of my bunnies. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to number 20. That's going to go ahead and stitch Happy Easter in the dark pink. It's a lot of jumping around, but it just saves a couple steps of switching threads. So we're now ready to sew Happy Easter. Now that I've completed the pink flowers and the Happy Easter, I'm going to back up again to step number 13, I believe it is, that sews the tack down for bunny number 3. After stitching the tack down, I'll take my last piece of fabric here, and now we're ready to do our tack down line for bunny number 3. After trimming, we're ready to do our decorative stitch on bunny number 3. So I've now completed all of my steps with the dark pink, and now I've changed back to white thread, which is what I'm going to end up with. So the white thread, the next step in sequence is number 16, which is going to do all of our decorative stitching on the bottoms of the bunnies. So we'll go ahead and do that next. Now that I've completed the white decorative stitching on the bunnies, I'm going to go back to step number 19 to do the little flower centers. I can jump all the way now to my very last step, number 21. So I have my white thread in, which is what I wanted to end up with, so that I can do my backing. So you're going to place your two, these are folded in, pressed in half, and you're going to place them so that they overlap. Make sure that the entire mug rug stitching has been covered. So you want to make sure you covered the whole area here with an overlap in the middle. The folded edges are overlapping, and you want to make sure that you covered that fold with a piece of Kimberbell tape so that your foot does not catch. Make sure I get that all covered there. And our very last step, I've still got my white on, and we're going to stitch the whole thing closed. Step, we're going to remove it from the hoop. We're going to trim a 1/4 inch all the way around and then trim our corners. After trimming a 1/4 inch, you want to trim across your corners and then trim just a little bit, like 1 inch up into each side. That's going to eliminate some bulk in your corners, and then you'll turn the whole thing through. So after trimming, just turn the whole thing through. You can now remove the topping off of the pink leather, poke out your corners with a point turner, and then you can give it a good press. You just don't want to press directly on the leather. So there is our final Happy Easter mug rug.